Hey everybody, hope everyone is enjoying CIMFest 2018. I know most folks are still out grabbing their lunch. The grilling obviously got a little bit of rain and delayed, but we're adding something to the agenda with GameDev Ask Me Anything with a number of our speakers. So we'll ask you all to join us for that. But before we kick that into gear, our conference director, CIMFest director, Rod Obando has something to say. Rod Obando, who's been working on top of this.
So, great turnout so far, great speakers. I mean, we've had quite the lineup for different things. Thanks to the Turner College of Business, we have some gifts for y'all. If you traveled far, you guys get a nice portable charger.
Hey.
If you're local, thumb drive. Hey. So, all right, so we'll start with the people up here.
Well, thank you. You get to go back for nice vacations. That's your prize.
There you go.
Woo.
And then,
are we branded?
Zach. I'm not about to throw this.
There we go. Turner College of Business.
And then for all my locals, we're the Dakota, Ish, Bass, Evan, Anthony, and Dr. Obando. So it should be 6, right?
Very cool.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rod.
And our keynote, he gets a special book, which I don't have, which is, we'll give to him when he gets here. He did speak early in the year for College of Business, so College of Business gave me a nice, cool School of Computer Science book to give him. So we'll award that to him when he gets here. And I guess I'll pass back to Andrew.
Cool, thanks, Rod. Good job putting together CIMFest. If you're watching this and not here for CIMFest, shame on you, but at least you are watching it. Been a great number of great presentations so far. So we're going to take about the next 20 minutes and just talk to a number of our speakers about themselves, their career paths, and of course we'll try and have some good, vicious AMA quality questions. Of course, it being a game dev AMA, we prefer the questions focus on game dev, and it being an Ask Me Anything, it's not an Answer Anything, so don't expect that the worst troll questions will get picked up. We'll enjoy the rest of them. So, I'm Andrew Greenberg, Executive Director of the Georgia Game Developers Association. I've been making my living as a game developer since 1990, all sorts of different games. And my next one is called Noble Armada Lost Worlds, which will be out in October. To my left is...
I'm Michael Brown, CEO of Vicarious PR. I sell games. I don't make them. I wasn't good at that.
I'm Jesse James Allen. I'm the editorial director of Falcons Creative Group. We design theme parks and themed attractions.
I am Joe Cassavaugh, the Joe in Puzzles by Joe. I am a solo indie about to release his 8th game in the ever-increasingly popular Clutter series.
And monitoring the live stream is Most Unique Studios. So whenever there is a question from chat through, they will be the ones relaying it to us. So I'm not taking that one. I know who it is. All right, so what's the first question, Most Unique Studios, and who's it from on which platform?
All right, from @KingFlash44 on Mixer. Hi, I'm a college student wanting to get into the game industry, and I wanted to know if obtaining certifications for programming languages would be helpful.
Anyone want to jump on that one? Joe, what do you think?
I don't know. For me, it wouldn't. It's a tough one. I constantly used to think about, if I had a kid in high school and he was really good at Algebra 2 and showed his, decided that he enjoyed programming, would I even send him to college? I don't know. It's so tough nowadays. I would definitely, for some companies, yes. Depends on where you're aiming. But if you've already got a little bit of the indie blood in you, you could get as good as possible, as quickly as possible, and probably do it on your own. And I don't know. I've never been certified in anything, and I took one computer course in college back in the day. Sorry, it's probably not the answer that the gods wanted.
I'll kind of piggyback on that. Having been in the video game industry for quite some time, and being somebody that helps hire people into the video game industry, one of the things that we always look for is, there's two states of mind. There's people that are like, I can't wait to be a video game developer or producer or whatever, and when I get that big job, I'm going to be that thing, right? And if that's what you want to be, you need to be that like right now. So if you want to be a programmer, start programming your own indie games, or an audio guy, start making your own sound effects and music, and build that library. The people that we would pull in for interviews were not the people that had the just awesome looking resume of like, went to this university, had this certification, all that kind of stuff. It was the guys that had some of that, and then here's some examples of things I do. And the minute you see that somebody has like something that maybe it's an executable or an indie game or some kind of interactive thing, we're like, this person's in it for the win, because there's no other choice in their life. This is what they're calling, right? And anytime we pull those people in, they were typically like the best people that we would pull in.
And I definitely agree with those. I'll take a somewhat different trajectory on this because you are currently a college student. You're getting a lot of different skills right now, and it's good to be able to show that off. Portfolio, what they just said, is the #1 way to show that off. But there are now a lot of jobs for game devs that are not in the game industry. First of all, if you are looking to get a job in the game industry and you're not already in it, you should be following Gamma Sutra, and on there they have a game jobs board, which is the best. Look in those ads, see what they're asking for. It's very rare you will see an official job posting up on Gamma Sutra say, should have certification in this, that, or the other. On the other hand, there are a lot of other things you can do with your game dev degree now. So for instance, I am constantly, as a GGDA director, getting asked by non-game companies how they can find Unity people. Unity is a big tool for film visualization, not making games, but trying to figure out how movies will look. I just got contacted by a real estate place laying out their properties using Unity, and they need a Unity developer for that. As we see the needs outside of the game industry, those are the people who don't understand what you're doing, and those are the people for whom a certification is valuable. So when Unity came out with their certification program, they never said this, but I believe it is because you had all of these folks who looked at Unity once and suddenly said, I'm good at Unity, and were taking these jobs with real estate groups and whatever, and they had no skill with Unity, but they were saying, I know Unity, and it was devaluing Unity for Unity. So they implemented a certification program specifically so these non-game folks could say, okay, they've got the Unity certification, they at least know what the engine can do even if they're not a master. And it got some of the folks who are lying about their abilities out of it. So as a college student right now, it's not a bad idea to get those certifications because you might want to do what Joe will argue you should never do, which is get another job to support your game development habit. And those working for a real estate firm using Unity is a great way to expand your own skills at someone else's expense until you're ready to go solo with it. So I hope that's a good look at it, and hope that provides it. And the Unity one is cheap. So the Unity cert's a good one to go ahead and grab. It's relatively cheap compared to a lot of the programming certifications.
I was on the fence about, by the way, whether you should or shouldn't have a job. I tried to present both sides of the issue, but it's a trap.
All right. And so, yeah, keep waving us down with any other questions. Good one, much appreciated. That was definitely not who I thought it was sending us the first question. I was hoping it was Joe's wife about to give us a difficult one, but no luck. That one would be the trap, Joe. But let me go ahead and go from left to right, and I'll take on the AMA side, and then I'll let them pepper me with questions as well. So, Michael, you made the transition from game journalist to games PR, and that's definitely a different side of the coin. So, A, what actually convinced you to make that change, and B, do you ever regret it?
Had 5 kids.
There we go.
Journalism paycheck wasn't enough no more. Journalism was fun, and I learned a lot in games media, but I got to a point where apart from having 5 kids and needing money for food, it got to a point where I didn't feel challenged anymore. And I always wanted to get into making games originally, but decided that I wasn't intelligent enough, nor did I have the patience to make games. So I went into games journalism, and then I figured that, I'm British and I can talk good sometimes. Might as well sell them too. So I never enjoyed working for people because I'm grumpy and British. So I figured I'd just set up my own company, and I had a lot of indie developers who were friends who, they went to marketing companies and paid like $10,000 and didn't get anything for it. And I thought that was a bit wrong. So I decided to make my company about the service rather than the results. So even if, because no marketing or PR effort is ever always successful, so if it doesn't work out, then at least we worked hard, rather than me not talking to you for 3 months and taking, all of your money. So I wanted to give back to the industry and give my expertise on games media at a time when I felt that a lot of marketing companies were a bit outdated. They were, like I said in my talk, like it was 95, and it's just not. So it was an interesting transition. There was a lot of marketing PR that I didn't know, and I kind of did the stupid thing where I went, you know what, I'm going to set up a PR company. And then did it the following day. I didn't know
No
what
PR.
I was doing.
You didn't put on any PR for your PR company.
I didn't even know what I was doing at all. And I really dove in the deep end and had no clue what I was doing. So I kind of learned as I went and made a lot of mistakes and learned from those mistakes. And so now I'm passable, just about. But no, it was an interesting one. 2 different worlds that kind of are forced to merge, journalism and PR.
So a quick follow-up on that. What has been your favorite game to do PR for, and why?
I did a game. My favorite game I can't talk about because I'm NDA'd. I suppose one of my personal achievements was really little niche game. It's a little puzzle game. It's a top-down isometric, basically like Final Destination, the game. And I thought to myself, no one is going to be interested in this little niche puzzle game. It's not going to be interesting. But we worked really hard on it, and really did the holistic approach to PR, which was only talk to people who I think might be interested in it. I didn't just spray and pray. I just talked to people who had either covered similar games or, somehow I could tie to it in some way. And we took a really long form approach, which was, the first 3 months we didn't get anything, we didn't get one article. But we persisted over a 6-month period, and the game sold 100,000 within its first day. And it's just through hard work. It was just through making sure that I wasn't, just playing it silly and just talking to people who were never going to be interested in the first place. But it was about really, really targeting, and persisting with the people. A lot of people say, don't if you've emailed a journalist once, don't email back again, or only follow up once. And that's not true. If you're doing it right, and you're not being lazy with your PR, and you're not being lazy with your email, so you've chosen the person, you've researched that person, you've made a nice, actual personalized email, and it's not like, hello, name, and you've really tried and put effort in, then there's no reason, and you believe in your product, there's no reason not to follow up, because journalists get hundreds of emails a day. So I emailed, and they didn't respond, and then 3 days later I emailed again. I was like, are you interested in this? No response. 6 weeks later, we got featured on IGN because but you have to make sure that all the foundations are in place for that, right? You can't assist at something if your game is terrible and you put no research in it. But I think that one was nice. It was a confirmation that I was doing something right when others were saying no.
All right, Jesse, you made a big transition as well.
Yes.
You went from one of the largest video game producers working on some of the largest video games in the world to a much smaller group working on much larger projects.
Right.
So can you talk a little bit about the difference from being in a really big company to being, your company's not small, but it is by no means huge. A little bit of the difference between going from a big studio to a little one, and what, if anything, you miss about being at the big ones.
Well, I think it has really been totally about curiosity. That's kind of what got me into everything that I've gotten into. Started off as a synthesist and messing with synthesizers and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, what can I do with this? Got into post-production. Had a really good time with post-production for a very long time. And then I kind of got to the point of like, I feel like I've hit the summit of this mountain. Where do I go from here? And looking around, this was in like 2001, 2002, something like that. Video games was like the Wild West, right? And this was back in the PS2 era and stuff like that. I'm like, I'm gonna do sound for video games, and I made that transition, and it was the Wild West. It was fantastic. It was a small studio at that time. You could literally like see the general manager right across the room, kind of thing. And I love the camaraderie of we don't have all the answers, and we've got to figure this out. We don't have the manual for every one of these game consoles. We have to explore and test and try and make things creative. As that company, grew from, maybe 100, a couple hundred people to, thousands of people, things, you just start to have a formula for how things are getting done. You start having, policies and regimens and all that kind of stuff. The Wild West fades away, right? And when I made the next transition, I was like, okay, what can I do with all the stuff that I've learned in video games and all the stuff that I've learned in audio and apply that to something I know very little about or have always been interested about? I've always been interested in theme parks. I've always been interested in museums. How can I take what I know and put that in that industry and make that a good thing for people who experience those things in that industry? And so transferring, across career paths, basically, it's just been this massive learning curve. But it's been a really exciting thing too. And I'm back in a smaller studio, we're about 50 people or so. And again, now we have these, how do you successfully make VR in a theme park environment? How do you make, those kinds of experiences without a headset? How do you, make things interactive, but also can get through, tons of people quickly? I love that challenge. And if there's two things that you gotta like carry with you, it's like curiosity and ambition. And to, tie those things together is you just have to throw out of your mind there's a specific way to do something and learn to adapt.
And the follow-up question for you is, at your old company, what was the favorite game you worked on and why?
Wow, my favorite game, it was probably the one that they don't ever want to talk about. But it was Superman Returns for the Xbox 360. And it was a 2-year development cycle. And the reason that it was exciting, number one, we had gone from having 4 megs of RAM for audio to having 32 megs of RAM for audio. And lots of streaming abilities, really open architecture compared to what our previous system was. We had a longer development cycle. We were on a brand new platform. It was 100% the Wild West. And I had gotten the influence of, we'd hired in a Hollywood sound designer who, just took everything to the epic scale. For me, that was like, taking a master's class in like sound design, because I'm just, absorbing all this information from this guy of like, here's how I'd go about it, and then try to make that something that is friendly for a video game environment. So again, it was, the learning and the excitement about it and just what we were able to do with the sound out of it. It didn't really matter how the game, ultimately went to me. I mean, that was still like a crown jewel, and 51 games I did at EA. It was just absolutely, out of this world. So.
I have another question from chat.
Okay.
From King Flash 44 again. So what programs or tools would I use for programming games right now? I've heard of Unreal and Unity. Would I have to take a course to learn these tools?
Joe, you want to take that one?
Sure. I So I've been trying to learn Unity. A couple years ago, I decided I finally, needed to go to Unity for my development. And I started, because I had the luxury of doing it, by hiring different people to do different prototypes for me to get me running. But I did not get over my learning curve till I found the perfect person that was good for almost pair programming, is what I did with him. Now, it's a little different because I'm experienced. I've got 37 years of experience, so I do know how to program. And what happened was I would actually look at his code and start refactoring to make it better. And he helped me jump around in Unity and so forth. And it really turned out that that was awesome. Everybody else's code I looked at in Unity that did work for me, it just blew my mind. And part of it was the C sharpness, part of it was the component architecture. There was many pieces to the learning curve. But once I got over that, I thought it was great. And I'm a book learner, so I've learned all my prior languages through books and stuff. But nowadays, you really have the internet can answer just about any question, especially in Unity. And I'm also very active in the Georgia Game Development Association, so I used to ping weird stuff to people there to get feedback. So either way, you definitely don't want to do it alone, but I think you can learn it on your own to a degree. What you need, what I would advise, is you define interesting tasks. Go to game jams, hook up that way. But one of the problems I had with most of the kids, for lack of a better word, that were doing Unity stuff is they got really good at doing standard stuff. Like they knew how to do a scroll, and they knew how to push pixels around, sort of, but they didn't really know how to do algorithms. And taking anything, whether it's make a game that plays poker, and I don't mean get fancy with the graph, I mean make a game that plays poker or cribbage, anything where you have to implement known rules and then verify that it actually did those rules, not, oh, that ball bounced off him good enough, kind of a thing where you're making it up as you go along, is useful. That's it. I don't envy you if you're just starting out, but the tools are so much better. I mean, it's a lot of things that bit me were actually my expertise. I had to let go of my assumptions with Unity. I would constantly learn the two different things Unity did, and I would immediately assume it was a specific thing about that component or that object that allowed that thing to do that thing. And it turned out those were almost always wrong. That there's a rect transform versus a transform, and I sort of thought those were different things, and one allowed you to do other things and have collections. And every time I put a restriction on in Unity, I was wrong. And it wasn't until later that I realized I had overcome my model. So, but final thing, really find something you want to do that's very specific and get it to do that, and then grow that. And then your expertise will just grow and grow, because you're not going to learn everything about Unity either from a book or even from one project or whatever. You're really not. Just not. So,
Either of you want to jump on that too?
I think we'll leave that.
All right. Yeah. The one other thing I'll say is that July 31st, we'll be having a live stream Unity workshop on these very channels, 8 p.m. EST, so check that out. And in addition, it's great to learn those engines, but if you have a specific game you want to make, also, Unity and Unreal, yes, you can do 2D, but really they're meant for 3D. If you want to do a 2D thing, Game Maker and Fusion are a lot of fun.
Do not waste your time. Sorry, I'm going to disagree strongly with Andrew.
All right.
That's a great short-term thing, and it'll make you feel good and give you warm fuzzies, but you're better off attacking your learning curve as soon as possible in either Unity or Unreal, just because you can definitely shut your eyes and wake up 5 years from now and they'll both be there. I'll give you $5 in 5 years if that's not a true statement. Whereas Coco's Game Maker and whatever may finally fall by the wayside, and you're not going to go get a job because you've got
That
Game
is very
Maker-
true.
Game
You
Maker
get a
skills.
job because you have Unity or Unreal.
Yeah.
Okay, we are also open for questions from the audience. Just feel free to raise your hand. We'll repeat the questions this time. You don't have to worry about coming up here. What are the job roles in the game development industry, and what is the future of them? Climate for those.
Yeah. So I would say I never consider myself a specialist in anything. Matter of fact, if you look me up on LinkedIn or whatever, it just says Renaissance man. And like LinkedIn, they'll tell you never be a generalist. That's like the kiss of death. You know, they're always specialized in something. And I will agree with that 1,000%. It's just like just be diverse, because when you're getting into these like wild frontiers, the wild west, as I say, if you're the guy that knows enough to be dangerous in a lot of different disciplines, you can really help the people that specialize in those different divisions talk to each other, right? So maybe you start off as like you're level designer, you know a little bit about coding, you know a little bit about audio or something, and you can tie those things together yourself or help people understand it. Or even if you're like level designer or something and you have an interest in PR,
The comfort level, and there's the always be closing that's mentioned in Glengarry Glen Ross, right? My rule is always be looking. That you should always be looking for your next job at whatever job you're at. Now, you don't want to sort of become the guy that everybody knows is always looking, but you should always be
aware of
looking for
opportunities.
Opportunities, correct. And but again, the gaming industry is actually quite strong up in Atlanta. There's several companies and
Huge.
so forth. And then there's companies that are you don't think of as the big ones, but they have definitely enough people and money behind or whatever and so forth. The big thing I would also caution against is you got to be careful of any company that's what I would call in abusing intern mode.
Mm-hmm.
You want to value yourself. As soon as you stop valuing yourself, you'll eventually regret it or burn out or whatever. But people should pay you for your work, whether it's piecemeal or whatever. Now, interns, it depends on what you're interning and doing. But if it's a set 6-week thing or whatever, that might. But most of the really good internships are also paid. I mean, I know somebody's out here from California working for Cartoon Network right now on a nice. In fact, he got we spoke out in GDC at this mentor thing, and he was worried about whether he should ask for more money because it didn't seem like they were giving him enough to really subside, while here, and he was worried about losing it if he asked. And we pretty much, it was me and another guy, pretty much assured him that if he asked the question and wasn't an asshole about it, he wasn't going to just lose the intern. And he actually asked, and they gave him more money. So
Turner did one.
it's what
Turner did. Wow.
yeah. So that was nice. But again, you don't want to devalue yourself. And really, as I said in my talk earlier, I've never been hired for a job I was really qualified for. So as long as you can see it's the next step, they're not going to hire you for 7 levels up the ladder, unless you get really lucky. I've been hired for a job, and you walk in the door, and he goes, "Good news, bad news." What's the bad news? Bad news is that guy that was going to do the Windows stuff, didn't show up. I said, well, that's good because I don't know Windows, and he was supposed to help out to get this demo. He says, yeah, well, the good news is you still got a job, and the demo's on Monday. So it's, it's just there's plenty. Just keep, there's lots.
And you'd ask about the specific roles.
Right.
With Siege in October, we have a number of different tracks. We have the art track, the audio track, the design track, the programming track, and the business track. And this is kind of a good way to break down the actual jobs that are in the industry. So artist, we know the traditional modeler, texturer, renderer path that you'll have at a bigger studio, a smaller studio. That's often the same person. I'm sorry, the modeler, texture, and then animator slash rigger, or animator slash rigger. But if you also need a UI artist, every little button and every little border, everything needs someone to have drawn it, so that can be you. Technical artists has become a great position, a mix of programming ability and art skills. And this means different things at different companies. At some companies, it's the programmer who makes the tools for the artists. At others, it's the artist who can talk to the programmers and get them to make it. So make sure you know how they're defining these terms. You've got the 2D pixel pushers we still need in the industry. We still need concept artists in the industry. So a lot of those roles, the ZBrush artists are in high demand, always. Good ZBrush artists are always important. You go to the audio side, you've obviously got the composers and the musicians who are making the music and the scoring for it, but you need the sound effects engineers who can do great sound effects and match together sound effects. You need folks who can oversee a good voiceover session, and marketing now is often pretty well tied into the audio side because they need great audio for any ads that they're going to put out anywhere. On the design side, design is the most meaningless term in game design. So there's so many different design roles now. You've got the overall game designer who's theoretically laying out the whole thing and can be anybody. You've got level designers. I like the role of AI design, where I can sit down. We were talking about this earlier. How is the AI supposed to react in certain situations? I'm not going to actually program it, but I'll say, here's what it should do in all the different situations and why, and percentage chance will do this, that, or the other. The narrative designer slash writer is an important one to add in. I love the fact that there's some companies with the audio design job as well, where they're not necessarily making the audio, they are saying, here's what it should be and how it should lay out. Do you want me to go through all the jobs first? You have a comment on that one? Well, if you had more step ones. Yeah, there are number one. There are a lot of different roles on business, marketing, PR, the executive side. QA often falls under the business side, but again, a good branch into everything because you learn everything the company does. And on the programming side, I hope a lot of you are in CS. I mean, you do see general game programmers, but often it does become the specialist role of engine programmers, we don't have as many graphics programmers we used to have, but that used to be a major one. Obviously, the AI coder,
Support art,
networking
too,
specialist.
by the way.
Pardon?
So support art, like things like cards, things that aren't used in game.
Graphic design.
Nowadays, it's not just the game.
Right.
It's, well, yeah, but
the graphic designer.
I know somebody that does cards for high res, I think, for instance.
Right.
Paladins have cards. Or whatever.
Right, card designer. Yeah, good graphics designers come into it. Security folk are important in the game industry. Yes, if you know the security side, that's critical. We've got all these different disciplines now. It's just amazing, all within the bigger areas. So I hope that answered your question. Yes, you had a question.
Yeah. So originally that started out with guys that were just sound designers, and they would create cool sound palettes of stuff. But in the video game, everything's nonlinear, so that sound palette has to move around somehow. Originally, we prototyped that stuff up and like things like Maximus P or Native Instruments Reactor or something like that to just get this is what it would sound like. It was dynamic. We would write out what all that logic would be, hand it to a coder, they would actually code it. Now, there's tools that specifically deal with that. You've got Wise, you've got Fmod, you even have Unity itself that can make those things interactive. And that's a major role for any studio doing like any kind of game design. Sometimes they actually just farm out the sound design, and then they just have their integrators that deal with getting all those sounds working correctly. A lot of studios still have a little bit of both. It also goes a step further when you're talking about like all the dialogue and the engine that drives the commentary. Like if you're playing a game of Madden, most people never even question the fact that that game is actually calling out dialogue as events unfold. How does it know that? It's not predictive, right? It's actually matching context. It's matching what AI is doing and how it's reacting, what your score is, what your traditional plays were. And it's matching that code up, and it'll say, this is the match, and here's the line that goes with that. There's guys that just do that, you know. So, yeah, it's pretty diverse. So, you know, if you want to start, like, looking into what makes that all work, you know, Wise is a great example. Fmod's a great example. Also, there's a lot of audio stuff in Lua scripting as well. So,
and I forgot a number of other jobs. Sorry about this. I'm going to jump back to it because that reminded me. User experience designer, user interface design, community management, social media side of this. These are all good areas, and a lot of these are entry level now. So, all right, sorry about that. Wanted to jump off that. You had a question.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. We got one online.
Do you want to do?
We'll do the audience first. You should be here. We'll do the audience first, then we'll go online. So, what qualities do game devs look for in game artists? What advice can you give aspiring game devs? And is the art industry as brutal and grotesque as we hear? Joe!
Fast, cheap mind reader. Seriously, I mean, it's a balance. But the biggest thing was, the biggest thing to let go of, I think, I would give an artist coming up. I had one that was really good that I picked because she did a 15-minute video. She posted a 15-minute video of a 24-hour process she did in 8 hours of this postcard of this Wonder Woman-like character with septic. And when I saw that, I'd already seen some of her art that I really liked. I knew she could do just about anything. It would be fast enough and whatever. And we negotiated, so she was actually okay on the fast, and I wouldn't say cheap, but you get what you pay for, so that's okay. But on the mind reading side, she constantly wanted feedback, and I realized early on that any feedback I gave her made it worse. So one time reality came to head is she was just very, very frustrated. She wanted feedback, kept asking, she always frustrated, anxiety. And I finally made her look me once right in the eye. I said, I won't use her name, but look me in the eye. I'm going to tell you what I want from you. What I want is you not to care about what I want. Okay? I do trust your judgment. We can always go back if I have to, and I'll tell you, good or whatever. But I'm not going to micromanage. It makes it worse whenever I do. And I don't want to see 3 or 4 things for me to pick. I want you to use your judgment as an artist and give me your best right off the bat of what you think would fit. And then if on a rare occasion I give you, feedback, I will. But early on we did the feedback route, and it was just horrible. And it would take me like a paragraph trying to express what did or didn't bother me about some specific thing. And then whatever change got made was just worse. Because it's sort of like, think of art as flowing. And then any feedback I gave is, you painted this nice mural, I give the feedback, now it's black. It's hard coded. It's just, I'm a straight edge guy, and I don't want that influencing my art. I want a grown up too, by the way. And that has nothing to do with this particular case, but I'm not going to hand cobble. I'm not going to, what I want from my artist is to not have it be a burden on my time. And I want awesome stuff. And I want you to mind read in the sense of I don't want you to cut back, I have track time. I do a thing with everybody I work with that whenever they correspond to me, they always have to include current outstanding unpaid hours so that I know how much they're spending. And that's the only micromanagement I want to do, just so that I know it's not going to get away that they're spending 10 hours on something I thought they'd do for 2. That's all I care about. And all my people, whenever I do any work, it's basically when they give me work, they get paid. And then I either have more tasks or whatever, but I don't give them tons of stuff. And all I want is them not to be, please give me feedback. The please give me feedback is the one that just, drives me crazy because it ends up worse and it wastes my time.
Either of you want to jump on it?
Sure. When I hire artists for marketing campaigns or trailers, etc., what I'm looking for is someone who has range. I want someone who's be able to do a variety of art styles on the drop of a pin, who is able to deliver on time. Because it sounds like people say, oh well, of course I can deliver on time. The amount of artists that actually deliver on time is very few, and so I don't mind you being expensive rather than cheap. But if you deliver on time, good quality work, and do, what the brief says, and are able to be flexible with your range. So I can, what I hate to do is have to hire a freelancer and then go hire another one for something else. I just want one person that I can go to every time. So if you can do a variety of art styles, then you're hired. Job done.
And I'll say that I've had the honor to work with some of the best game artists in the business, and I know they are because now they're leads at much bigger companies than mine. Chuck Vincent over at High Res, Rob Dixon over at Cassavaugh, a wonderful lady I worked with who's now over at Gimme Games. Anyway, the thing that I found common among them that the great ones did, is they would take on the art and own it. Their own style was going into it, and it would be markedly theirs. They would definitely, this was their work, and no matter what description I gave them, their mark was all over. It was much better than anything I could have told them to have done. Secondly, they got integrated into the entire game development process. They knew everything that was going on, and the spirit of the game really came out through their art as much as anything else we could have possibly done. And third, they communicated like mad. They were constantly talking with other folks. It's not, as you're saying, what do you think about this? They're picking people's brains about the game, how should it feel, how should it look, and so forth. And these are people who've been in the game industry now for decades. So yes, it can be brutal, especially for a freelancer, but I think that the rewards that the ones I know have gotten out of it are tremendous, and they would not have been nearly as happy in any other area except maybe being paid $1 million for each painting they did. So until they get to that level, they're very happy to be in game development.
And we abuse artists just a little less than the comic book industry. So, if you're looking for a baseline.
We got a question online about GGDA meeting. We're actually kind of killing time until Rado Bondo gets in here for the GGDA meeting. So
so the question online is from Dr. Dunn on Twitch. I've been building websites for 4 years now and working in the digital marketing space for 2 years. What's the best way to start niching down and working with game developers and companies?
No clue.
And to start networking. I mean, if you're not already out there meeting and talking with game devs, that is absolutely the number one place. You have a skill set that's of value to game devs. I mean, it's very funny because people, when they hear game dev, immediately think you can make websites. And it is I can make websites, but I use WordPress for that. Thank you very much. So if you have that skill set, start mixing with folks. And if you have game ideas you want to do, go to a game jam or go to a game dev meeting and start talking about it. Pardon? And Joe's also a big advocate of just going to the game jams and getting to work on it. And in the end, the best way to start working in the game industry is start making a game. Nothing beats it.
I think, because you said he had digital marketing services, right? So if he's doing digital marketing and you want to appeal to game developers, you really need to go to events to get your first client, because it's really hard to do cold call a developer and say over email, hey, I would like your business. You need to go meet people.
All right, and I know we got other questions out there in the audience. I don't know if there are others online. We've got the GGDA meeting now to bust into, and then in 10 minutes, the rest of the presentation starts. So hang out and talk to the folks afterwards for continuing the AMA. Any last
questions for me? Just come up in that.
Any last questions in the chat we definitely should handle? All right, then we're going to go ahead and go into the GGDA meeting. With that, bringing back Rod Obondo.
Does that mean we can leave?
Yeah, go grab me with food.
Okay.
Thank you all very much. A round of applause for our panelists. And they never had time to ask me any, so I win.